at the Carson City Community Center, Robert Bob Kroll Boardroom. Linda, can I get a roll call?
Mike Jones,
Here.
Bobby Rader,
Here.
Stacy Giomi,
Here.
Damon Bath.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Can I ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll move on to item 4, public comment. I don't see any, so we'll move on to item 5, approval of minutes of the April 8th, 2024 CTA board meeting. Any member of the board see any corrections or additions to the minutes? If not, can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
I'll second.
This is Stacy. I'll second. Oh.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Hearing none, motion passes. Next, we'll take up the consent agenda. Would any member of the public like an individual item pulled for discussion? Any member of the board like an individual item pulled for discussion? And hearing none, if I can get a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Stacy, I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing
Aye.
none, motion passes. With that, take us on to item 9, discussion and possible action regarding the Carson City Culture and Tourism Authority CTA final budget for fiscal year 2025. Chris, I don't think there's been any changes since the April meeting that we went over, but you can go through it.
So this is the same budget that you guys approved back in April as a tentative budget. There were no changes made by the board and there were no changes made by state taxation. So we just copied the tentative file in column into the final column. So unless you've come up with some changes you wanted between last month and this month, it's just going to be what it is.
Any questions for Chris? Hearing none. I will now open the public hearing to consider the approval of the fiscal year 24-25 tentative budget report for the Carson City Culture and Tourism Authority. I will first allow questions from members of the CTA staff. I will then entertain questions and public input, followed by questions from the CTA board. I will then close the hearing before we move on to the next agenda item, which is to take action and approve the fiscal year 24-25 budget. With that, are there any questions from the CTA staff? Are there any questions or input from the public? Don't see any. I will now close the hearing and open it up to the board to discuss the fiscal year 24-25 tentative budget. Any questions from the board?
Just one clarification. I think you said tentative budget, but you meant final budget, correct?
I'm sorry.
Chair, Stacy was saying you said tentative budget, but you meant final budget.
Yes,
Yeah.
final. Sorry. With that, if there are no questions, I'll get a motion.
I move to approve the adjusted FY 2024 budget report as presented through March 2024.
I'll second.
Not the right motion.
On
Sorry.
the
What am I looking
on
at?
the question,
Oh,
Sorry.
someone said adjusted, but we didn't adjust anything, correct?
I'm sorry, that was the wrong motion. I'll try again. I move to approve the CTA final budget for fiscal year 2025 as presented.
This is Stacy. I'll second.
all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Hearing none, motion passes. With that, we'll move on to monthly non-action items. Item 10. David?
Thank you, Chair. For the record, David Peterson, Executive Director with Visit Carson City. 10A is my monthly executive director update. Two things on tap for this month. I'm happy to say that our fiscal 25 Travel Nevada marketing grant of $43,607 was recommended by the Territory Advisory Committee last week in full, and it was actually one of only 8 grants that received full funding. That recommendation will move on to the Commission on Tourism for their June meeting. And I'd just like to say, excellent work on this, Lydia. Great application. So well done on that front. The second thing I wanted to acknowledge and say thank you to Senator Rosen and to Mayor Lori Bagwell for their certificate of appreciation and proclamation, respectively, for the second annual Mark Twain Days Festival. I'm not going to read through both certificates, but they did acknowledge 14 partners and 14 individual performers with different certificates of appreciation from the Senator's office specifically. So I just wanted to acknowledge both those folks, and we really appreciate their support behind the event. And it was an awesome event, and I'll get to that later in the Arts and Culture report. So any questions for me on either of those items? Hearing none, I'll go on to 10B, transient occupancy tax actual versus forecast. That's the big sheet in the packet. I am happy to say that March was not as bad as we had originally forecasted. If you recall last month, we were thinking we might be down around 15% year over year for the month of March. We came in, I say this only down 4.39%, but a much better month than we originally thought we were going to have in March. And I want to remind the board that Lydia and the team did start the targeted paid search campaigns, which were specifically to drive lodging bookings. And that campaign started on March 11th. So I think we had a little bit of an impact. I'm not saying, we were responsible for all of it, but I definitely think the second 2/3 of the month, we had some impact with that effort. And that campaign continued through April. So we'll see how our April numbers look next month. I did not change April, May, and June, so those forecasts remain the same. And that would put us at just under a percentage point below our final budget projection from a year ago, May. And we're projected to be down just over 4% as compared to last fiscal year. And that's in that last furthest right column, those last 2 numbers that you see there. Are there any questions on the lodging tax revenue update? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to 10C, Arts and Culture Update. And I'm going to do this for Mr. Brooks. Okay, great. Lydia, will you advance up a slide? Perfect. 3 things to talk about this month: Mills Park Amphitheater mural and sculpture pads, Cinco de Mayo Celebración, and Mark Twain Days. Perfect. So I don't know how familiar everybody is with the amphitheater's new mural, which I think is amazing, quite frankly. Lydia, if you'll go one slide further. So this came about as a part of the Carson City Leadership Institute class for 2024, and they chose the small amphitheater at Mills Park for their whole class project. You can see there's some landscaping, updated facade, lighting, and I think it was really great because there's concrete pads for future art, which we'll show on the next slide, and it was truly a community art project, Eric reports. And so you had hundreds of community members painting the individual tiles, which was a mosaic mural, I guess, and it was a sort of a tip of the cap, as it was put, to Mr. Stan Jones for his contributions to Carson City and his commitment to local art. And here are the temporary art pads. I'm very excited about these. So Eric worked with Parks and Carson City to get these put in. It's part of the Parks Master Plan. Updates to the space will come forward through donations, in-kind labor, and services and the like. And I think he said first come, first served basis. And we've got 5 potential pieces of art coming, and I'm excited because they'll rotate. So this will be temporary art, and they'll kind of rotate different artists coming through. So that gives you a little bit of a visual of those particular pads. All right, Cinco de Mayo 2024, this was a brand new event for us, Visit Carson City. I think it was a great success. It brought folks to Fuji Park. It was also tied in with the downtown wine walk, and of course our partners at the Brewery Arts Center. So over 800 people participated. We had the international muralist Edwin Esco Martinez complete a Hispanic-themed mural at the Brewery Arts Center, and it's amazing, quite frankly. If you haven't seen it, please go and check that out. And Eric will do a full report at the June meeting. Okay, here we go. So Mark Twain Days. I just want to give a shout out to the Brewery Arts Center, Spike and Val and Mikey, and then to my team, especially Eric Brooks, along with all of the partners, that participated. And I'll let Eric do this justice next month to identify all the individual partners and the performers. But we went from 12 events last year to over 100 this year, which I think was quite frankly spectacular. And we brought an entirely different community on board, being Virginia City. So all 3 days, Virginia City had events in conjunction with us. And so about 5,000 24-page event programs were distributed all around Carson City and sort of the local region, Reno and Gardnerville, Virginia City. Again, I mentioned the certificates of special recognition, and I apologize, I said 14 performers, it's 16 performers. And Lori did a great job reading the proclamation at the bow tie event. Bow tie event was awesome, if I do say so myself. Over 150 people attended. And let me just tell you, the way that Spike set the music up, the performers, it was so cool. They were all staged throughout the museum. So we basically moved those 150 people throughout the entire museum to hear different types of music. There was a guy in a banjo. He was just totally jamming out. And then 50 feet away was a lady on the harpsichord, which was just so cool. So hats off again for the music. And this particular second annual, the content I think was amazing, quite frankly. And I know the literary piece, the Rare Book Fair, was very well received. I'm just excited and really looking forward to next year where there'll be a full music build out. And I think that's going to be great. So we will have Spike and or Val come in maybe August, maybe September to do a full report recap on behalf of the BAC. So I'm just hitting the highlights right now. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions from an arts and culture program perspective. Okay, hearing none, thank you. And again, hats off to Mr. Brooks for his work and the team at the Brewery Arts Center. I'll move on to 10D, events and sales update. So in Stu's absence, I'm going to hit some highlights here on the events and sales front, starting with Arena Wars last month, which saw 500 attendees. Our attendance was unfortunately impacted due to the UFC 300 event down in Las Vegas that same evening. But next year, we hope to have somewhere between 700 and 800 attendees. So I think they'll work on the timing of the event so it doesn't correlate with a big UFC event down in Las Vegas. Of those 500 attendees, 160 came from California, 40 were from Oregon, and another 20 were from Nevada, and they traveled beyond 60 miles of Carson City. So I think it was a nice distribution of people for sure for a first-time event. And then Matt Phillips with Arena Wars, he was so pleased with the attendance and the venue that he's actually hoping to bring additional events to Carson City, potentially this July, but preferably, I think, for us, November, which is a shoulder season for us. So I think it's a great opportunity. Came in with one event, and now we might set ourselves up for 2 or 3 of these type of Arena War events moving forward. So very exciting, and hats off to Matt and the team. And then I'm not going to remember something with Fox on an app. The whole thing was videoed, and so that went out to something with Fox, and you have to forgive me, it was a streaming service of theirs online. Lydia, if you know, okay. So I think that's going to get us some great playback as well moving forward. So I'm very excited about Arena Wars. Moving on to the 775 Off-Road and Recovery Service event, which was our snow-filled May weekend, if you all recall. In spite of the weather, the preliminary number of total people out there, this is the registrants plus spectators, was about 500. And they had over 250 registered vehicles. I know there were a few no-shows, but when I spoke to those folks, they said, we're out in this kind of weather all the time, so they could care less if it's raining or snowing or hailing or whatever the case may be. They too were very pleased with the event, and they're interested in having a second event during the year with an emphasis on kids. So here I think we have an opportunity to work with this group to bring a second event to Carson City. So again, very excited about the event, the response by the event promoter as well. Shifting gears a little bit, the National Outdoor Recreation Conference took place at the Tahoe Blue Event Center earlier this month, and I want to just extend my personal thanks to Open Space Manager Lindsay Boyer and Carson City Trails Coordinator Greg Bergren. They were our designated attendees with everything that we had going on leading into Mark Twain Days. They were kind enough to represent all things Carson City. They manned our booth, and we had a wonderful booth set up. I'll make sure when Stu's back next month, we get some pictures in on a PowerPoint presentation so you can see what that looked like. But this particular conference saw over 400 recreation resource planners, land managers, policymakers, tourism and destination stewardship partners, researchers, consultants, innovators, and leaders in outdoor recreation come to Lake Tahoe. And it was a great opportunity, Greg said, to talk to people about Carson City, which most had never been to Carson City before. A lot of people actually, believe it or not, have never been to Lake Tahoe, which I thought was interesting. Those that drove to Lake Tahoe were planning to stop in Carson City after the conference, so Greg and Lindsay did a great job of telling these folks everything they would be able to do on their way back down from Lake Tahoe in Carson City. So again, thank you to Lindsay and Greg, and our partnership, I think, with Carson City Parks Rec and Open Space continues to get stronger with each passing month, and I really enjoy working with Jen and her whole team. So this past weekend, we had no less than 5 different events going on, from soccer to trap shooting, sword fighting, as well as the Nevada High School Track and Field Championships, and of course our marquee event, the 2024 Pete Stetna's Pater Gravel Grinder Race. And I'm very excited, and these are preliminary numbers. They may change when Carlos comes in to do his final recap, but they said they had almost 600 registered riders. That compares with 419 last year. There's about a 10% attrition rate, so I think the actual number of riders will probably settle around 550, but that compares with 377 last year, so quite an improvement. What ironically impacted the actual number of riders was the track and field event, because 2 teams from North Lake Tahoe, I think specifically, a bunch of their kids were actually participating in the track and field championships over the weekend, so they chose not to ride. And here's a great statistic that I heard just before the race began. Our event is top 3 in North America as far as female participation. And I think Shimano, Lydia, put $10,000 of prize money forward. I think that was for the women's event, yeah?
Yeah, women's only, the women are the only one who get any kind of purse prize.
Yeah, it's just amazing. And so I really appreciate that equity, that diversity and inclusion component to what Bike Monkey does. So it was a great event, nothing but positive feedback. Within the cycling world, there was a ton of buzz about the event. Hats off to Pete and the Bike Monkey team for an amazing effort. And I'll quote Mr. Pete Stetna. He said, "This year we had a record turnout. We're on an upswing and creating FOMO and desire worldwide, no joke. And that's thanks to your belief in us, already looking forward to 2025. And as I mentioned, Carlos will come in and do a final recap August or September, because he'll have a post-event survey come out of all the participants, the sponsors, our vendors, the whole 9 yards. So again, hats off to those guys for an amazing event over this past weekend. One update on the sales front. Again, I'll let Stu do a full dive at the June meeting, but Stu was down there in LA at IPW. He was manning our booth as a part of the Travel Nevada Pavilion. He took close to 50 appointments while he was there. 5,700 delegates were present, including 2,000 buyers and media from nearly 70 countries. And I think it was north of a 20% increase in the actual attendance for IPW. And again, when Stu returns next month for next month's report, we'll do a full debrief on the additional events where I unfortunately just don't have updated information from what took place this past weekend. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions on the events and sales front.
I do have a fun addition to that.
Oh, please,
We
yeah, go
actually
ahead.
had a company called Grupo Mex Hall.
Oh,
Forgive me if I mispronounced that,
Okay.
but they did a video of Stu at IPW and shared it to all of their followers, talking about why Carson City is a great destination. So I think Stu made some great connections while he was there.
that's awesome. And I don't want to steal Stu's thunder, but there was a Chinese tour operator. If you all recall our flapper piece, that you get to open and close and flip. She thought that was and I can't remember her name, the coolest piece of collateral she's ever seen. And I think we have a picture or a video, but I think that's on Stu's phone or something. But she was thoroughly engaged and enthralled with that piece. So, yeah. So I apologize if there were questions on the events and sales front. Okay, hearing none. We will move on to agenda item 10E, marketing and PR update. Lydia, take it away, please.
Thank you, Lydia Beck, for the record. Just starting off here, there's some new imagery coming in from our local content creator, Shelby Holty. Took some photos for us this spring, so enjoy those throughout the presentation. But until then, let's dive right in, and starting with our web and paid digital media. So just a reminder, as Dave mentioned, was a month where we had an increase in our marketing and ad spend in order to help drive more overnight visitors to offset that drop in anticipated visitation that was projected. So some highlights that we saw, to summarize these many numbers here: we saw a heavy increase in web visits. The boosted organic content that we'd used, specifically the observatory reel, which you'll see here in a minute, led to an increase in website traffic and engagements. And additionally, Shelby Burns' influencer content also contributed to this increase. The new newsletter and visitor guide ads that were launched in March contributed to a pretty exceptional increase in newsletter signups and visitor guide downloads and requests. We also had a lodging campaign that had increase in clicks, click-through rates, website visit, and lodging bookings, which led to our overall increases for paid search. And then in May, we are now back into our normal ad spend. So next month, we'll probably see a pretty drastic drop in between what we're seeing this month and next month. So just want to set those expectations, but we're hoping to continue to have engaging content that will still drive really strong website visitation and in all of these categories. So public relations. April was a really strong month for us. Of course, the Carson City to Canada quest continues to garner positive media attention. Our applications close on May 31st, so we're doing one last push here. You can see we were covered by some pretty strong outlets. I think we have over 150 media mentions at minimum. And last month I had mentioned we were working with the Dreamscapes magazine to get a mention of the Capital to Tahoe Trail that was secured and was mentioned in the magazine in the spring-summer issue. So we're very excited to see that. And then we had 2 VAMP visits in April. One was Brian Cicchione, who's a New York-based travel writer that was brought in with the Reno Tahoe Territory Partnership. And then Nezrin Tarabosi, who is a social media influencer that we brought in on our behalf, who focuses on family travel. You'll get to see some of her content in the next slide. But she did some wonderful posts for us that got a lot of engagement. We also developed and distributed press releases for Mark Twain Days and the Cinco de Mayo celebration that were picked up really heavily locally as well. And thanks to Eric Brooks, who drove all the way to Sacramento to do a TV interview for us for Mark Twain Days and did a wonderful job. So we're definitely getting some legs in our key core markets for these brand new events and evolving events that we have and continue to sponsor and participate in. I'm very excited for next month to see what we can find on Setna's Pater and where that national news really went, because they have done a pretty phenomenal job. And one of the things I appreciate their partnership is they focus heavily on their media and PR for this event, and it really gets a national and global reach. So I'm hoping we can track some of that and see how far this event really went. So here's some influencer generated content, and Damon and Stacey, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if you'll be able to hear it or not, depending on how it goes, but I wanted to provide some examples of what our hired content creators and influencers are providing for us during our partnerships. Obviously, influencers are something that we heavily participate in and utilize our budget for, because they are an impactful part to seeing Carson City through someone else's eyes. And we think that that's important to have another lens beyond just our internal team. And I think Nezrin was a really great example of that. And we wanted to focus also on diversity and inclusion, which obviously we've talked a lot about. And she was definitely part of those efforts and just a wonderful addition. So these I pulled obviously when I was preparing this a couple of weeks ago, but you can see here that, at least a minimum of 25 people sent this to their friends to view, 19 people saved it. But since then, we've had it over like 105 comments, I think, and reaching over 4,000 people. So she's got a quite engaged audience. And I would love to show you some of this content. So I'm hoping that this plays well. So it says, point of view. You take your kids on a road trip to Carson City. And man, did they hit a lot of places in just a day. So they only stayed one night throughout a weekend, and you can see how long this itinerary is that she created for Carson City. And so this is the stuff that we love to see. And these comments were nothing but people surprised of what's here in Carson. All right, and then some other content that we've got is by, sorry for the confusion on the Shelbys. We have two Shelbys we work with. Shelby Burns is an influencer that we work with, and then we work with Shelby Holte, who's the local photographer who lives here in Carson City. She's been working with us for a few years now, and she is just really tapped into jumping on trends on social to really get engagement on our posts. And she specifically creates content for our audience and our page alone. So here's some examples. She did one about the observatory reel, because the Saturday night star parties definitely are something that are kind of a hidden secret in Carson City, but when people find out about them, they're very intrigued. And so we had her go out, create content of what that kind of looks like, or even just give a general overview of, hey, this is what's available. And we've posted this 3 different times since she created it last year. The first time got 45,000 views, the second 162,000, and the third time, this last one, we posted last month, it got 72,000 views. And that was all pretty incredible. So here's an example of that. It says, do you know the public can explore the night sky from Carson City? And then directs you to read the caption, which tells you all about the Saturday night star parties. So really quick, really easy. This next one was a really fun one that she did that jumped on a trend that was happening. In the beginning, it kind of gets cut off, but it says, oh, look, spring is here.
It's here. No, it's gone. It's gone. It's back again. Gone again. It's back again. Yeah, gone again. Look, spring.
So just some fun giggles, but man, organically, that got almost 180,000 views. 6,600 people liked it, 72 people commented, and 4,300 people shared it with one of their friends. So just a fun way that, shows our changing seasons and gives you a little glimpse about what our town looks like. But I think that's some of the powerful things of working with a local content creator who's really tapped into that on a daily basis. And just shows a little fun side of Carson City as well. So I hope this gives you a little taste of some things that we're doing organically as well.
Is it? No.
Okay, updates on the Carson City to Canada Quest. As I mentioned, those applications close May 31st. So far, we have over 230 applications. And so we are thrilled with some of the quality that we're getting. And Zach and I will be narrowing down to our top contenders, along with Greg Bergeron, the city's trails coordinator. And we're selecting those that we like to interview before making our final decision, which will be in July. So more to come on that, but that's where we are. So hopefully we'll have a pretty narrowed down audience by June. I would imagine by July, we'll be able to tell you who our contenders may be, but if not, by August for sure. Any questions on that before I jump into the media plan?
Lydia, could I just mention that Nicole at KPS3 sent Brett McInnes from RGJ to Stewart this week, and he did an interview and a tour. So
Lovely.
hopefully he'll come out with an article soon.
I hope so, and we will. Be sure to include that anytime when that comes out. But yes, I'm glad you reminded me of that. Thank you. That was a fun connection that she made there. Okay, well, let's jump into the proposed FY25 media plan. So let's recap some of our basic goals we had in mind when deciding where to place our efforts for FY25. The traveler planning journey begins obviously with the dream phase, then planning, then booking, and ultimately ending in a visit. Our approach to this journey is focusing on brand awareness, reaching as many people in our drive market with impactful, engaging content. So though our focus is here, of course, we're going to have some channels that are focusing on the booking phase. But our goal is making a lasting impression as people are selecting their destination. That way, we're better positioning Carson City to generate lodging bookings long-term as more people will know about the destination. Right now, we have a summer outdoor digital campaign that is just about to launch, where the majority of, and also we have our winter campaign, which is where the majority of our spend and focus will be as an awareness campaign and generating buzz. We intend to also retarget the audience that engages with this campaign and sees these ads to further entice bookings. Outside of this campaign, we'll have channels that are always on so that they support the plan and booking phase. I'll be presenting much more on this campaign in the future when more details are worked through. So this is just a slight teaser, and I hope it keeps you guessing for a moment. But this is a little teaser, and if you were part of our RFP process, is something that KPS3 also pitched to us too, which I think is going to be really fun and cheeky, that will evolve into an evergreen winter campaign, not just evolved around Christmas. So don't worry about that. These next few slides are how and where we're intending to reach potential visitors in each phase, but I'd like to jump to the channel plan so you can get a better visual of this and exactly where we're going to be targeting these people. First, this is a graph of our monthly spend over the year. You can see the bulk is focused in our shoulder and off season. So using this winter campaign that I just mentioned really will drive awareness and bookings in our notoriously slower months, and hopes this is a start in curbing the fairly drastic drop in winter visitation. And lastly, here is our proposed $290,000 distributed between channels, co-ops, influencer promotions. And just to note that the red numbers are just for internal use. So I don't put any clout into that meaning anything special. That was just for us. But you can see that a majority of our budget really goes to digital media. It's really where we can spend the most dollars, the most wisely. And if there's any questions that I can entertain in how we distributed these funds, I would love to take them now. But this is what we're hoping to accomplish over the next fiscal year.
Any questions for Lydia? Thank you, Lydia.
All right.
Great work.
Thank you all.
On this. I appreciate it. Excellent job. And I just want to say on the Carson City to Canada Quest, I think initially we were thinking we might get 40 or maybe 50 applicants. So to be at 230, and these folks are from around the world, which I think is incredible, right? So a lot of legs to go on this particular endeavor that we're all on for the next year and a half or so, maybe a little bit longer than that, I guess. So thank you, Lydia. Great job. We will move on to 10F, future agenda items. Anybody from the board wish to see anything come up next month? Okay, not hearing any takers. 10G, upcoming meeting, right here, this room, June 10th at 4 p.m. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the chair. Thank you.
Thanks, David. That moves us on to item 11, board comments or announcements, requests for information. Anyone?
I have something.
Sure.
I wanted to mention that we're very excited that we welcomed a new education coordinator today. Her name is Melanie Smokey. She is Yamba, Shoshone, and Washoe, and she is a tribal educator. She's a medicinal plant expert. She's a basket weaver. She has so many talents, and we're super excited to welcome her to our team at the museum. And also to let you know that the Stewart Father's Day Powwow will be June 14, 15, and 16. And we will have the museum open those 2 of those days on the weekend. Thank you.
Any other comments or requests for information? None. We'll move on to item 12, public comment. I don't see any. So our last action item is to adjourn. If I could get a motion,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second. We're adjourned.